Dawson Rider with you.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my next video in the Power Rangers Team Up Rewind review series. This time we'll be talking about Always a Chance, the special one-off team-up episode between the Mighty Morphin Black Ranger Adam and In Space, mainly In Space Black. I almost forgot about this one for the main series, and I debated about adding it in as a bonus video along with some other ones, but I felt like I wanted to talk about this one here before we get to the 10th power, because I think it's kind of interesting as we go through this series to talk about the evolution of the team-ups, and I think this one's an important building block, which you'll see what I'm talking about when I get to the review. But thanks to those of you that reminded me of this one, which I'm surprised I forgot about it when I thought about this series, considering it actually is one of my more favorite ones. So this team-up works for me on a lot of levels, even though it's a very small, like, one-off cameo team-up, which is kind of why I almost put it like in the bonus episodes, because it's not a traditional team-up, but the other two ones I just covered weren't either. So this episode's premise is simple. It's almost like just a standard episode, but you have this added in cameo that enhances it. And the premise is basically they have this lizard monster called Liz Wizard. Yep. And he has this ability to switch places with people when he's touching them with their tongues. That's what she said. He uses this ability in battle to switch places with Cassie, which results in Carlos accidentally striking her with his lunar lance. Also, that's what she said. I'm sorry, that's what happens. So Carlos is shaken by this. He becomes afraid of his abilities, afraid of himself. Not like, I'm too powerful, but like, he loses his confidence because he's afraid he's gonna hurt someone. He doubts himself as a ranger. Even though he apologizes to Cassie and she totally understands what happened, he's still shaken by it and can't seem to get past it. And later when he encounters the monster on his own, he's so shaken, he's literally shaking and he just can't defeat it. But luckily, Adam saves the day, who's just been creeping and watching them this whole time. And Adam's like, WTF, mate? I gave you the turbo powers? What are these powers? I leave you alone for 5 minutes and you got new powers? What'd you have to do? Quest through the desert? No? Travel through time to find crystals? What? Well, he's like, oh, journey into space. I get it. But so Adam mysteriously shows up. I always wondered how he knew, but like as I've gotten older and watched the episode more, I kind of assume slash kind of headcanon that Alpha called him. And I'll get to that in a minute because I'm going to talk about something involving that. But basically Adam is there to mentor Carlos through this. And this works for me on a lot of different levels because Adam was a bit of a mentor role to Carlos. Like not only is Carlos his successor, but it wasn't like in the power transfer where Jason, Zach, and Trini met Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. Like, Carlos was in the show a little bit before the power transfer, and so and he was already in a mentor role when he chose him, so there was already a pre-established relationship, and to see that continue here in their roles as Rangers was really cool and a nice continuation of that. I also thought it was a nice continuation of Adam's character arc. Like, I really have always enjoyed Adam. I've seen other people mention this before, but he was always one of my more favorites back in the day because he was a little shy, a little bit more introverted like myself, and so I always identified with him. And I really enjoyed watching him come out of his shell more as the series progressed, which I think was helped along by him helping characters like Tanya and Justin become Rangers. And then now here, I think that continues with Carlos, and we get to see him in an even more confident mentor role, like more sure of himself, more sure that, you know, you're gonna make mistakes. And I thought that was kind of, it felt like a natural continuation of his character arc from the series, and I feel that even furthers further in Once a Ranger, and again, I'll talk about that later. But that just worked for me on multiple levels because of the pre-established relationship, and I felt it was a great continuation of Adam's character. And the thing that I like about this one, which is odd, is on paper, this isn't honestly too different from what I talked about in the previous two team-ups, Rangers of Two Worlds and True Blue to the Rescue, where it doesn't necessarily on paper feel like as much of a team-up because everything was so connected, and you just have a regular character from the previous season returning. And Adam, on paper, is not that different returning from Justin. He was also from Turbo. He was just recently in Turbo. Sure, it was the first half. He wasn't seen a little bit more longer than Justin, but still, it's the same situation, but yet somehow, even when I was younger, this one was the first team-up episode that felt exciting to me, because it was someone feeling like they were from longer ago appearing, felt like we hadn't seen Adam in a while. The other ones just felt like, hey, it's nice to see you, but you were just in last season. But for Adam, it felt exciting for some reason. And I think that also comes from the fact that he's using the MMPR powers, and it kind of reminds you back to when he lost them during Ninja Quest, and it just kind of tethers it all the way back to the long legacy, and I think that's why it's more exciting. But I've talked about in the previous 2 team-up reviews in this video series how the other ones, one of the elements they were missing of like the team-up checklist of like, you know, character interactions, fighting together, Megazord fights, the one that was missing was the excitement of seeing a returning character. And for me, this is the first one that had that. But so he mentors Carlos a bit and trains him in a montage in which Adam shows off all of the different type of hair and bandana styles he ever used in the series. But Carlos is still shaken and runs off. And there's a nice little scene between Adam and Alpha 6 where they're talking about like, oh, I really hope we can get his confidence back, you know? And Adam's like, man, sometimes I just wish I could still be a ranger, you know? And then he pulls out his old original Morpher that's broken, presumably from the fight with Rito back in the season 3 premiere of MMPR, or, you know, the real premiere, not the Masked Rider episode. And then, you know, Alpha 6 says, you know, you can't use that, it's broken, you could risk your life, which clearly tees it up. Now, I like this scene and this part of the story for multiple different reasons, kind of what I talked about with the connectivity and kind of adds more to it, and tying it back to MMPR just makes it feel a little bit more exciting and rich. But also, this low-key sets up Once a Ranger. Now, I'm sure they weren't setting up for a team-up 10 years from now in which Disney owns the franchise, and I don't know how much they thought about this episode when they wrote Once a Ranger, but at least in kind of a coincidental and headcanon way, this sort of set up Once a Ranger for me, because you set up that Adam has the broken Morpher, so now it makes sense that Sentinel Knight prepares it in the future form, or repairs it in the future, rather, excuse me. And then the fact that Alpha 6 and Adam interacting just kind of enhances later on when he awakens Alpha 6 during Once a Ranger. And like I said, after this scene in which they were kind of talking about trying to get Carlos better, I kind of assumed that Alpha was the one that contacted him. That said, like, he was trying to think who could help, Adam would be the perfect fit. And so then I kind of headcanon that maybe they were in contact in some form, and that's why he contacted Once a Ranger. But anyway, ultimately Carlos quits, and I don't know what he's gonna do, just go on the run with his gym bag. But as a result, later when the monster attacks, Adam is forced to jump into action and use the Mighty Morphin Black Morpher and risks his life, not only just fighting the monster, but using a power source that could destroy him. It's really cool to see the sort of back and forth in and out of morphing he does. It's not like perfectly synced up, because he'll be like morphed to be like, okay, I'm morphed, and then it'll show him depowering and he's like down here, like they don't sync up the heights. But it was still kind of cool. And fun fact, in the Forever Black story, in the Power Rangers comic annual, in one of them, this is one of the versions of the Black Rangers that shows up, is like half powering Adam, which is kind of cool. But I thought that was just really cool to see. It was kind of a spin on when Tommy was losing his powers, except he wasn't losing them. It was like they were broken, so they were phasing in and out. And I thought it was a good catalyst to inspire Carlos, because not only was Adam showing that he was willing to take a risk, which Carlos was worried about, but he also put his faith in Carlos, which I think really helped him, you know, gain the courage that, hey, this guy believes in me and he's taking a huge risk, so I can do the same thing. And so Carlos comes in, we get to see the 2 team up, which was really cool. Something else that was kind of neat about this was, I felt in a weird way it came full circle, as Adam was a Green Ranger when he passed the mantle on to Carlos, and now they're both meeting up again as Black Rangers, since Adam started as a Black Ranger, and now Carlos is ending as a Black Ranger. There was something kind of cool, full circle-y about it, especially seeing them side by side. But you know, the powers ultimately fade out, the Rangers destroy the monster, and you know, you get a nice scene of them at the end. One small funny note, like at the sort of camaraderie scene at the end, like everyone comes up to see Adam, and obviously the only one that doesn't know him is Andros, and Andros like pats him on the back, and Adam like flinches because he's clearly in pain, and he gets his look on his face like, who the heck's this guy? Overall, I really like this team up. Like, honestly, it's not a traditional team up, it's more of like a cameo crossover, but I think it works on a lot of different levels. For being such a simple episode, it's really helped by the rich history that it kind of ties into, and the role in which Adam plays, which I think was done really well. And I feel like I'm going on about this being really good for just being such a small episode, but I really like believe that. It's honestly better for me than some of the full team episodes, because it just really works well for me on a lot of different levels. But what do you guys think? Do you like this episode as a team-up or crossover episode? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Awesome Rider, signing out.